Dear students, as part of the course, we will be covering today the first module on development and overview. The learning objectives of this module is to enable a critical perspective on demographic transition theory, development and overview, development as evolving, problematic, multiple stakeholders point of view, development views from above and below. Development as a debate shifts in meaning. If we look at post-World War II, countries in the West, especially Europe, faced many reconstruction challenges. Entrusted to International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which subsequently became the World Bank. There are several theories developed during this period, and the major challenges facing developing countries, paths towards industrialization, development issues, and industrialization, how they became synonymous, are main focus of those theories. The demographic transition theory was developed around this time. The primary focus during that period on emphasizing on development was to increase incomes, enable the poor greater access to a range of goods and services as in developed countries. Industrialization, capacity to manufacture the finished goods were also valued. Independence for countries in Asia and Africa post the war also furthered impetus to industrialization. Industrialization was seen as a mean to improve citizens' quality of life, to strengthen the new independence, and to convert political equality to economic equality towards gaining self-respect and dignity, which colonization had denied. Also, we need to focus on state-level led development, given experiences in countries like Latin America and the debates around that time. State being the main actor, how it viewed to develop economies or societies to meet needs of the people and focus on better than the market, and it is working towards the collectives, the need to increase state intervention post-war supported by structuralistic economic trends were the major issues. Many countries in the third world adopted state-led models. Demand for products increased against a booming economy in the world, which provided capital towards the development of industry and infrastructure. But growth was slow, not at pace with country needs, and also inefficiencies are noted. Many countries in the third world adopted state-led models. Demand for products increased against a booming economy in the world, which provided capital towards the development of industry and infrastructure. But growth was slow, not at pace with country needs, and also inefficiencies were also as a major characteristic. All led to debates regarding role of state and market, and greater role for market took emphasis. The strategies for structural adjustments of international agencies, which pressured countries in the third world to move towards similar policies. However, overall it can be seen that there are some gains, mostly problematic, did more harm than good. Late 1990s anti-globalization movement, post-modern thinking influenced development thinking, and they are referred to at times as post-development gained prominence. Emphasis was to questioning the development concept, seen to be imposing control over citizens and improving conditions, to reject development for a more decentralized participatory approach, emphasized people in measuring ends and means of development. Amartya Sen's development as freedom considerably took a major emphasis during this period. Success in East Asian countries recalled popularity of state as actor for a short time, but the Asian financial crisis in the late 90s contradicted that. While it bolstered the power of many international bodies, it enabled them to assert liberalization agendas in these countries. Early 2000, development theory more flexible, less program oriented, the debate changed from the extent of state's role to improving its role and also towards a more locally focused approach. There are several issues related to the aspects of development, and over a period during the last few decades at various issues related to the meaning has changed, and they are all listed in table 1. What are the various dimensions of development theories is another important thing which we need to understand. The context, the historical context and political circumstances that led to the various developmental issues is one of the important aspects, and also we need to know that the explanation was mainly for assumptions about causal relationships, the epistemology, rules of what constitutes knowledge, the methodology in terms of various indicators of development and research methods in the study of development are mainly focused. Further, articulating or privileging particular needs and cultural preferences is also an important aspect. It further led to emphasizing on images, evacuations, symbols of development, the desired, the cultural, policy, agenda and future projects. Various diverse actors in the development field also we need to understand how the civil societies, the UN systems and international bodies and various state level governments, how they have emphasized and what is support to the constitutional provisions that have come up during this period. Another aspect which we need to know is that there are several issues that led by various dominant countries in influencing the development, and the major advanced features of this is on industrialization, urbanization, use of agricultural techniques, sharp rise in living standards and material productions, which led to aspects related to education, particularly cultural values which are widely adopted, a central place for capital, science and technology. They are all very important dimensions that have been focused during that period. Reports at the time looked to restructure entire societies, much of the world towards prosperity and progress, which are not only material and also in economic terms, but reality contradicted. Instead, underdevelopment, impoverishment were the products of such development. Until the 1970s, although there were critics, preoccupation remained with needing development in countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and some countries, especially in Asia, Africa and Latin America, not to subject to construction and conceptions of European discourses and imagination about these countries to have increased autonomy over self-representation. What are the characteristics of modernity that is to be re-examined was a major emphasis during the subsequent periods. Third world people are as existing outside and distant, the theories and outside interventions geared towards knowing, and the third world woman considered as an average gathered from statistics and categories measured against women in the West and associated characteristics. These are some of the things which we need to emphasize in this during this period. This constructs further overall representations of third world countries as lacking in many ways, as waiting for the West for assistance. These representations only depict power relations in the world rather than truths about the third world, with significant consequences in all ways, and allows exercise of power through constructions and representation. This also applies to the development discourses. The development discourse, especially during 1945-1955, affected subsequent knowledge and practice in similar ways, shaped the meaning of development. Terms as overpopulation, persistent famine, poverty and illiteracy are common stereotypes associated with the third world, which continue to exert power. Some works have attempted to deconstruct key terms in development discourse and important efforts towards alternatives. The deconstruction development is mainly deconstructing truths and perceptions in the eyes of the West from which discussions is constructed. Through that destruction, new practices and possibilities can emerge. The grassroots movements, social movements, evidence of critics of development Alternatives are also emphasized. New possibilities arises, inclusion of different kinds of experiences, practices, knowledge which can alter power relations, social, and also emphasizing on social sciences. Some of these issues that have an adverse impact while having discussions on development were economic and environmental crisis, the urban focus of development that has created a difficult to live in cities and where political, social and cultural interests are affected. There are alternatives and critics like issues related to women's movement, ecological movements, the Chipko movement, green movement, civic movement, etc. are all local struggles taking place, repairing what development has done, but creating knowledge necessary for alternative spaces to be created. These are some of the major emphasis during that period. Now let's focus on the capabilities approach which has come up subsequently. It discusses generally prevailing focus of development as income expansion and economic growth. Goods itself is not problematic. Its importance as an overarching goal is what ends are confused with the means to achieve these ends. It may be less of a problem of economic prosperity or linked closely with enriching human lives. As we have seen, it may be less of a problem of if economic prosperity was linked closely with enhancing human lives. Given examples of countries with high per capita GNP but very low quality of life indicators, as the majority of the population suffers from early mortality, avoidable morbidity, illiteracy to a large extent. And there are countries which have experienced the growth rate in terms of GNP and also other quality of life indicators. For instance, economic prosperity, only a means to enriching people's lives, but given status of an end, even as a means, economic prosperity alone is not adequate to pursue well-intended ends. To assess means, ends need to be identified first. Therefore, the capability approach. It considers human life in terms of doings and beings or functionings. It relates quality of life to the capability of a person to function. It proposes a need to focus on development, achievement and freedom. It argues for the need for reflective evaluation rather than a more mechanical evaluation. What are the advantages of capability approach? It allows to evaluate living standards as well as quality of life. It allows for a general framework within which to discuss efficiency and equality. It is a pluralistic approach. Development has many distinct processes combined rather than expansion of a single indicator of real income or utility that does not account for difference. Capabilities may vary from basic freedoms as freedom from hunger and malnutrition to more complex freedoms as self-respect and social participation. Human development requires attention to multiple sectors and a combination of multiple social and economic processes. It focuses on functioning and capabilities. It emphasizes the freedom to choose one end of life, one quality of life as opposed to another, rather than simply counting achievements. For instance, education sector, it's central to the capabilities approach and to human development. It increases the ability to exercise freedom, and also it depends on how the level of education is received for enhancing the overall productivity. Now let's discuss about the human development approach. The human development approach developed by the economist Mahbub Haq based on Sain's work on human capabilities. Latter half of the 20th century, it links made between economic growth and development. Gross domestic product and economic growth were leading indicators of country's progress, not intended to measure well-being. Later, emphasis to go beyond GDP and emphasize on employment, growth alongside redistribution and meeting of basic needs of people, the basic of human development approach. The first human development report in 1990 introduced the human development approach to advance human well-being and improve the lives of people. It goes beyond economic growth. It focused on expansion of the richness of human life on people, opportunities and choices. Opportunities, for instance, for greater freedom to live life as people value it. It focuses on development abilities and chances to use these abilities. More choices are also considered part of human development, providing opportunities but not insisting they be made use of such that choices are people's own concern. The process of development is then to create an environment where people can both individually and collectively develop their potential to the fullest and have a reasonable choice of leading lives as they value. The Human Development Index, in the backdrop of that developed through the first Human Development Report, it's a measure of achievement along basic human development dimensions across countries, but it is a simple, average and not weighted. It does not take into account the issues of other dimensions except longevity, education and income. Critics have enabled the index to be refined for a broader picture of human development across the world. Subsequently, we need to understand the Millennium Development Goals that have been emphasized later to 2000. The countries worldwide, as leading development institutions, civil societies, partners, came together towards poverty reductions through the Millennium Development Goals. There are altogether 8 goals, and the target of achieving them by 2015 was a major emphasis. Since 2000, work has been ongoing. The MDG Summit culminated with a global action plan towards keeping the promise to achieve these goals and pledging resources for subsequent years is a major emphasis. There are altogether 8 goals. Goal 1, eradicate extreme hunger and poverty. Goal 2, achieve universal primary education. Goal 3, provide gender equality and empower women. Goal 4, reduce child mortality. Goal 5, improve maternal health. Goal 6, combat HIV and AIDS, malaria and other diseases. Goal 7, ensure environmental sustainability. Goal 8, develop a global partnership for development. In 2017, if we look back, there are many successes, but significant challenges remains still. What are the major challenges? Persistence of gender inequality, large gaps between rich and poor, between rural and urban, climate change and degradation of the environment, which have primary impact on the poor and also undermine progress. One of the significant threats to human development are conflicts. Large populations live in poverty without access to basic needs. What about the role played by India when we refer to Millennium Development Goals? India signed the Millennium Development Goals Declaration in 2000, reaffirmed its commitment to the MDGs over the years. It is in line with India's own development goals, focusing on reducing poverty and areas of deprivation. And by 2015, India has met some of the targets, but challenges remain. Let's look at each of these goals, how India has performed. For instance, poverty reduction, Goal 1, somewhat successful at an all India level, but uneven across the country. Poverty headcount ratio reveals that by 1990, it was to the extent of 47.8%, has come down to 21.9% in 2015. The MDG target in 2015 was to achieve 23.9%. Poverty was halved since the 2000s through economic growth, also in agriculture, and a rise in social spending through national employment and health programs. But a large number of still live in poverty. Hunger elimination remains the foremost challenge. The proportion of underweight children has declined marginally, as has malnourishment, both of which are below the target. Goal 2, which emphasized on universal primary education, and significant progress has been made. Primary and elementary school enrollment and completion rate of girls have improved, almost at pace with rates of boys. Literacy rates for youth at the national level above 90% for both males and females, males having higher rates. There is an act, Rights of Children to Free and Compulsory Education in 2009, but education quality is an area to be worked still, as well as the significant share of children out of school failing to complete education, especially girls, children of minority communities and in rural areas. In the area of Goal 3, gender parity reached at the primary school level, improved in other areas, but literacy rate of women are still behind men, also reflects inequalities with regard to learning outcomes and opportunities. In Lok Sabha, in 2015, it has been emphasized that only 65 female representatives out of 542 members, 31 female representatives out of 242 members in the Rajya Sabha, disproportionate for the national parliament and well below the target of 12.3% against a target of 50%. Goal 4, under 5 mortality rate, making a progress considerably. 125 per thousand labours was the situation in 1990, which has come down to 49 per thousand labours in 2013. The goal for MDG, the target was to be achieved 42 per thousand. Child survival to be improved, better catering to the reproductive and child health services, to neonatal and childhood illnesses, especially for marginalized, disadvantaged and vulnerable communities. Many large states in India are falling behind the targets. Need to emphasize on infant mortality and undernutrition prevalent on a large level for expectant mothers and children. Government, various ministries are creating child-centric policies. The National Policy on Children in 2013, National Policy on Early Childhood Care and Education, Integrated Child Development Services, ICDS, as well as other initiatives are to be emphasized here. Under the Goal 5, maternal mortality, MMR progress, which is very slow relative to other indicators. For instance, in 1990-91, the MMR was to the extent of 437 per 1 lakh live births, which has come down to 167 in 2009 and which was expected to reduce to 109 in 2015. The institutional facilities, especially trained delivery, is necessary for safe motherhood. In the area of deliveries in institutional facilities, no doubt it has improved from 26% in 1990-93 to the great extent of 72% in 2009. The trained personnel have increased during this period from 33% to 76.2%. The conditional cash transfer scheme called Janani Suraksha Yojana has improved institutional deliveries, but quality of maternal care needs further improvement. Goal 6 emphasizes on HIV, malaria and tuberculosis prevalence on the decline across categories of high risk. Greater awareness and increased use of condoms also reduce transmission of HIV and AIDS through sexual activity, which is the primary focus. The prevalence among adults has declined from 4.45% in 2002 to 0.36 in 2009. The prevalence of malaria declined till 2013, slightly increased in 2014, and the statistic shows that it was in 2001 to the extent 2.12 per thousand, and in 2013 0.72 per thousand, and in 2014 a slight increase of 0.88. In the case of TB incidence progress, stable success rates in treatment and reduction, the reduced prevalence was from 465 per lakh in 1990 to 211 in 2013. The reduced incidence has come from 216 in 1990 per 1 lakh to 171 in 2013. In the area of environmental sustainability, India is progressing very well as reflected in Goal 7. Forest cover has increased 5,871 square kilometer to 21.23%. Cover of protected areas increased to 4.83% of total land area. More efficiency with regard to energy utilization in GDP growth is pivotal to create energy security. Progress in sustainable access to safe drinking water. Access to improved water sources increased from 68.2% in 1992-93 to 90.6% in 2011-12. Sanitation facilities remain a problem, however, particularly considering that India is one of the most densely populated countries in the world. The final and the last goal, India has the second largest telecom network in the world after China, with the rural areas also connected. The internet subscribers have been risen significantly given the telecom and IT sector seeing advances growing by 60% in 2013-14. India has become an important partner in providing intellectual as well as techno-economic and intellectual assistance to countries across the world. The ICT industry in India are at par with the global leaders. India also provides developmental assistance to the least developed countries. So these are some of the major achievements that have come up during this period. To that extent, India has moderately and a significant success has been achieved by these countries. In the area of sustainable development and sustainable development goals, which have subsequently have been a major emphasis, we need to see how these issues have been discussed. They developed to work in common towards global societal welfare. It aims to do this by focusing on people, planet, prosperity, peace and partnerships. It builds on the MDGs but offer a broader and more complex focuses. It arises out of multilateral efforts, early on beginning more formally with the UN Conference on Human Environment in 1972, the concept popularized in 1987 through the United Nations report on environment and development. The broad and commission definition is that development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs is defined as a sustainable development. This definition has been used and become more popular notably after the conference at Rio de Janeiro. In 2015, different governments developed the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development with a set of 17 quantitative goals in the areas of social, economical, environmental and various aspects of sustainable development for people, planet and prosperity. So these 17 SDG goals, which are directly cited as Goal 1, end poverty in all its forms everywhere. Goal 2, end hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition, promote sustainable agriculture. Goal 3, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. Goal 4, ensure inclusive and equitable equality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Goal 5, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Goal 6, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. Goal 7, ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all. Goal 8, promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment and decent work for all. Goal 9, build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization and foster innovation. Goal 10, reduce inequality within and among countries. Goal 11, make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable. Goal 12, ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. Goal 13, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. Goal 14, conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas and marine resources for sustainable development. Goal 15, protect, restore and promote sustainable use of territorial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, halt and reverse land degradation and halt biodiversity loss. Goal 16, promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all and build effective, accountable and inclusive institutions at all levels. And Goal 17, strengthen the means of implementation and realize the global partnership for sustainable development. Students, now overall let us conclude by saying that the development discourse have taken different dimensions over a period of time across different geographical societies, and also there are various factors that contributed for these discourses. And further important aspect is at a global level there are several issues related to measuring the human development, measuring the Millennium Development Goals and also Sustainable Development Goals. They have been worked out and the various indicators have been presented, and each of these countries have been asked to see the progress in terms of its measurement across the different goals and to see what are the gaps in their development so that they can focus on in minimizing those differences and to focus on the various economic progress so that the quality of life of all their people can be achieved over a period of time. So these are some of the important aspects when we are discussing about the development overall view.